This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
New York lawsuit. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. Attorney General Pam Bondi is suing the state of New York for its refusal to comply with federal immigration law.
You will be held accountable if you do not follow federal law. It's over, it ends, and we're coming after you.
Bondi named Governor Hochul, Attorney General Tish James, and DMV Commissioner Mark Schroeder in that lawsuit.
And what New York has, they have green light laws, meaning they're giving a green light to any illegal alien in New York. Law enforcement officers cannot check their identity if they pull them over. Law enforcement officers do not have access to their background.
At a press conference yesterday, Bondi was joined by an angel mom whose daughter was murdered by an illegal immigrant. Governor Hochul called that lawsuit worthless and publicity-driven. The Trump administration scored a major win amid the litany of legal challenges over the president's plans to downsize the federal government. A Boston judge has just unpaused a federal freeze on buyout offers for tens of thousands of government workers.
The judge ruled the federal worker buyout program can move forward. The White House saying roughly 75,000 federal employees took the offer to resign and be paid through September.
Correspondent Alice Barr, President Trump's pick for Education Secretary Linda McMahon is sitting today for her Senate confirmation hearing. She's tasked with heading up an agency that the president wants dissolved. McMahon promised today, if confirmed, she will protect Jewish students from anti-Semitism. She also vowed to stop schools from letting boys into girls' sports and spaces. The head of America's second largest teachers union is decrying the efforts of DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency.
It's not efficiency, it's evisceration. It is an attempt to take the funding away from each and every child.
Randy Weingarten at the American Federation of Teachers says dismantling the U.S. Education Department is not the answer for what ails America's schools. White House counselor Alina Habba calls it a good start, however.
Woke, DEI, CRT, that's all gone now. And we're going to make education in our country the way it should be.
Recent test scores show 65% of America's fourth graders are not reading at grade level. Robert Kennedy Jr. being confirmed today as Secretary of Health and Human Services. Correspondent Douglas Ader.
Despite some concerns about his prior views on vaccines, he is promising to make America healthy again.
RFK's promise to end America's disease epidemic. His views on vaccines, however, cause some to question his qualifications for the job. Trade will dominate talks today as President Trump welcomes the Prime Minister of India to the White House.
While India is our largest trade partner, we currently have a trade deficit of $50 billion in India's favor. The two will talk this out this afternoon in the Oval Office.
Correspondent Brooke Singman, the president and the prime minister will host a joint news conference around 5 o'clock today. President Trump spoke by phone yesterday with Russia's Vladimir Putin about winding down the war in Ukraine.
President Putin wants peace and President Zelensky wants peace, and I want peace. I just want to see people stop getting killed.
The president plans to meet with Putin in person in Saudi Arabia soon. Missouri Senator Josh Hawley.
We need this war to end, and the unlimited guarantees that the last administration was making, we'll just spend hundreds of billions of dollars on this forever. That was absurd, and I'm glad President Trump's putting a stop to it.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says no U.S. troops will be used as part of any peacekeeping mission in Ukraine. Terrorism reared its ugly head today in Munich, Germany. Over 24 pedestrians were hurt. Many are critical. Cops say a man plowed through a crowd with an automobile. The accused is a 24-year-old Afghan asylum seeker who was known to police. No rest for the winter weary.
This was a 1-2 punch for the East, and we're going to make it a 1-2-3 punch with that next storm getting here this weekend.
40 of the 48 continental states have been impacted by severe weather.
The third winter storm of the week is bringing Chicago its biggest snow of the season so far.
Katie Byrne with Fox Weather. Meteorologist Craig Allen.
There has been rain, sleet, snow, hail, thunderstorms, tornadoes, gusty winds, flash flooding.
You name it, it's out there, and there's more coming. We've got winter storm warnings in effect in ski country and bitter cold on the way. The polar vortex about to make a return big time. Send our temperatures plunging next week. First the fire, now the flood. Evacuation orders in effect in fire-ravaged Southern California. Reporter Craig Figner has the latest from the L.A. burn zone.
This storm could bring several inches of rain, according to the National Weather Service. It could also trigger rock and mudslides. Los Angeles Councilmember Tracy Park represents the Pacific Palisades, where thousands of people lost their homes to wildfires last month.
With a burn scar twice the size of Manhattan, full of toxic debris, poised on unstable hillsides, we are all very, very concerned.
Concrete barriers are being used to keep toxic runoff from reaching the ocean. Craig Figner, Los Angeles.
Still to come on the Noon Report, a Thursday edition. Firefighter killed in the line of duty. Showboating is out in Pennsylvania and lowering the cost of prescription drugs.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams, calling for falling temperatures, gusting winds, and rain showers to flip to snow showers in the hours ahead. Forecast details are up in 10.
All right, Kevin, we'll see you then. As mentioned earlier, Attorney General Pam Bondi is suing the state of New York over its refusal to cooperate with federal immigration officials.
And if you are a state not complying with federal law, you're next. Get ready.
Bondi cited New York's green light laws, which allow illegal immigrants to get driver's licenses. She says that law has been a hindrance to the law enforcement efforts of federal ICE officials. A Binghamton, New York firefighter was killed last night in the line of duty while battling a 3-alarm blaze. 2 other firefighters were injured when the building collapsed. They're listed in stable condition today. We get more from Spectrum News reporter Lacey Leonardi.
Now, the mayor said this is an unspeakable tragedy and has asked the community to pray for the entire department.
Binghamton Mayor Jared Cram added that the city is mourning a fallen hero who made the ultimate sacrifice. The head of New York's second largest school district is leaving her job. Buffalo Superintendent Dr. Tanya Williams-Knight will be retiring at the end of the school year.
Today, I am doing one of the most difficult things that I've had to do in my professional career.
Williams-Knight worked in the district for some 35 years, the past 3 as superintendent. 30,000 students are enrolled in the Buffalo Public School District. Police investigating a hit list at a Western Pennsylvania elementary school. That story new at noon from Family Life's Brian Query.
Police in Manor Township say they have been made aware of an alleged hit list at Lenape Elementary School in the Armstrong School District. Officers say the threat appears to be non-credible and said the school and community are safe. The list allegedly mentions several 5th grade students and specific things that would happen to them. In an email to 5th grade parents, the district said there is no indication at this time that there is any direct threat to any student. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Thank you, Brian. A school bus driver in Snyder County, PA, accused of sexually abusing students in his care. State police say this guy, 78-year-old Arthur Harner, preyed on kids and showed them inappropriate videos on his phone while he was driving them home from a school in Penn Township. That school is for special needs students. The assaults reportedly went on for almost 5 months. The Collins Correctional Facility in Erie County, New York, remains locked down today following a security incident early yesterday. Kenny Gold represents the state's prison guard union.
You're dealing with murderers and rapists every single day, and the possibility of something happening, it's dire and immediate.
The lockdown was triggered after some prisoners barricaded themselves in rooms. Once contraband was found, 1 guard was slightly injured. No inmates were hurt. That prison will remain on lockdown mode until guards complete a full facility frisk. 2 people in custody in Pennsylvania today after credit card skimming devices devices were found at several Walmarts. A 20-year-old and a 16-year-old accused of installing the devices on self-checkout registers at Walmarts in York and Adams counties. U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York is sponsoring a bill that would reduce the cost of prescription drugs.
By the time they turn 60, most Americans are taking at least one prescription medication, and many say it's difficult to afford them. Some are skipping doses, cutting their pills in half, or neglecting to get their prescription filled because of price concerns.
Gillibrand wants to cap yearly prescription drug costs at $2,000 for individuals or $4,000 for families. Erie County, Pennsylvania is dealing with a rash of school absenteeism due in large part to a trio of troublesome illnesses. Erie County Health Director Erin Marinick.
We know that right now both flu and RSV cases are elevated, which is also respiratory disease, and COVID numbers all combined to make a lot of respiratory disease happening in the community. So if you're feeling sick, it could be one of those three things.
Flu cases this year are the worst they've been in the past 15 years. Miss Julie's School of Beauty in Rochester, New York is all of a sudden caught up in a federal funding freeze debate. Executive Director Julie Chappis thinks the spending pause in Washington is akin to throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak.
Let's say somebody has a garden, right? We understand that the garden needs to be weeded, but you don't pull out everything and then decide what you want to keep and try to go plant it back in.
Chappis says her ministry only has a month of funding left, and she's forced to run everything now on a shoestring budget.
It's heartbreaking, and it's very sad. It's very sad, but I need our survivors to know that I'm not walking away over money. I'm not giving up on them.
Miss Julie's School of Beauty ministers to the victims of human trafficking by teaching them how to cut hair in the city of Rochester. The Pennsylvania Interscholastic Athletic Association is cracking down on showboating in high school basketball. The PIAA wants referees to penalize players who make taunting gestures during games, such as mimicking the shooting of a bow and arrow or firing a weapon with a finger gun. Sounds like those kids are watching the pros too much because they do it all the time. We've got more sports next. It's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, we begin on the hardwood and a thriller at Madison Square Garden last night. Jalen Brunson knocked down a jump shot with 10 seconds left in overtime, and the Knicks defense made it stand up. They knocked off the Hawks 149-148. Brunson finished with 36 points, while teammate Karl Anthony Towns led all scorers. He finished with 44 points and 10 rebounds. The Knicks have now won 4 of their last 5 games heading into the All-Star break. The Philadelphia 76ers losing streak continued as they fell to Brooklyn 100-96. The Nets' D'Angelo Russell led his team in scoring with 22 points. Brooklyn has now won 3 straight, while Philly has dropped 5 in a row. Other winners on a busy night in the NBA were the Celtics, Magic, Pacers, Cavs, Pistons, Bucks, Kings, Thunder, Rockets, Nuggets. In the Nuggets victory, Jamal Murray, a career-high 55 points. Also winning the Jazz, Mavericks, and Clippers. On the ice, the opener of the Four Nations tournament got underway, and Mitch Marner found the back of the net in the overtime period to lead Canada past Sweden 4-3. Also scoring for the Canadiens, Nathan McKinnon, Brad Marchand, and Mark Stone. Tonight, the United States will take on Finland in their first game of the tournament. Baseball. Spring training is underway, and one two-time World Series champ is going to be putting on a different uniform this year. The Boston Red Sox have signed Alex Bregman to a 3-year contract. Bregman spent his first 9 seasons with the Houston Houston Astros. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy, thank you very much. And still to come on the Noon Report for a Thursday, Justice Department sues New York State. Israeli paramedic talks war with Family Life News, and Trump's strategy to stop the war in Ukraine.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. When the Syrian government fell last year, a CNN reporter was filmed, quote-unquote, rescuing a man from prison, only to learn later that he wasn't an inmate at all. The man was not an enemy of the state, but instead one of the regime's intelligence officers. This was certainly an embarrassing episode for the most trusted name in news, but unfortunately not a once-off problem. In fact, the entire news establishment has all but lost the faith of its consumers. Getting the news used to mean subscribing to a newspaper or listening to the radio or flipping to one of 3 TV networks. By the 1990s, 24-hour cable news ushered in the new era of news consumption. And this need to turn viewers into consumers and keep them tuned in had a predictable effect on the whole process. Denzel Washington once said, sounding very much like Neil Postman or John Somerville, that if you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do read it, you're misinformed. He went on to note that one of the long-term effects of too much information was that the media now had a need to be first, not necessarily true. And social media platforms could deliver the salacious outrage and the constant breaking news even faster. But we're also forced to deal with things like algorithms and an unprecedented level of competition. So the more emotion a post could manufacture, the more interactions it earned. This has created a feedback loop where crazier ideas get platformed, more nuanced approaches get sidelined, and everyone becomes an expert. Even more important has been the postmodern mood permeating both popular and academic culture. Generations of students have now been taught that truth and ethics depend on where someone fits on an intersectional hierarchy. This "no one really has the truth" mantra has permeated pop culture for years. And if facts are imaginary and morality determined by perspective, we should not be surprised when for many it simply doesn't matter whether what is said is true. And these very same ideas spilled into public policy. When the world shut down 5 years ago due to COVID, news outlets and social media platforms shut down any debate. Questions about COVID policy, origins, and cures were all silenced instead of answered. And when only the party line is allowed, the abuse of power is essentially inevitable, as is the cynicism that will necessarily result. And of course, more recently, there were President Biden's mental and verbal lapses that became harder and harder to ignore. Yet that's exactly what many in the media did, while others even assured the public that they just couldn't believe what they were seeing with their eyes. After the disastrous debate performance, CNN was forced to admit that reporters failed to tell us the truth. And later, the Wall Street Journal fully chronicled how the White House had attempted to hide the president's decline. Now, the most common claim anytime that information is suppressed to this degree is that it's only done for the good of the people. Ironically, this kind of hubris only further deteriorates public trust, and it makes conspiracy theories all the more attractive. When people are treated like, as C.S. Lewis once said, infants, imbeciles, and domestic animals, then society's robbed of 2 essential elements. First, people who are committed to seeking and speaking the truth. And second, collective trust. A healthy society needs both, and that's why journalism can be a public good, but only if it's trustworthy. Trust matters because truth matters, and vice versa. Insisting on both, that's a way that Christians can love God and love their neighbors. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
All right, John, thank you very much. Let's head outside next. Kevin Williams.
Here is your Family Life weather forecast for this afternoon. Blustery, rain showers flipping to snow showers, falling temperatures. Tonight and tomorrow, variable clouds, some snow flurries. Lake effect snow could accumulate several inches in areas southeast of Lake Ontario. Low temps tonight, teens, high temps tomorrow, 20s. Saturday, cloudy with snow arriving and high temperatures in the 30s.
All right, lots to consider there. Thank you, Kevin. This is the Noon Report on Family Life. I'm your host, Bob Price, and the brutal winter weather, which Kevin just alluded to, will continue right through the weekend and on to next week as well. Reporter Maggie Vespa says from the Midwest to the Northeast, everybody's feeling it.
And as you can imagine, roads, highways, even air travel due to this were all a mess across the region yesterday, while down south, they're now cleaning up again as this wild week of winter weather continues.
Winter storm warnings in effect off of Lake Ontario, where more than a foot of snow could fall by tomorrow morning. Next week will mark the return of the polar vortex. Won't that be nice? And that's when we'll see a few days of temperatures struggling to get out of the teens. Tragedy in the Parlor City. A 3-alarm fire last night claimed the life of a firefighter in Binghamton, New York. 2 other firefighters were wounded when the building collapsed, trapping the victims inside.
Firefighters are still, with their hearts broken, having to tend to this fire and keep their community safe.
That's Lacey Leonardi with Spectrum News. The blaze broke out around 10 o'clock last night in a building near the banks of the Shenango River. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi is suing the state of New York for failing to comply with federal immigration law. She named Governor Hochul, Attorney General Tish James, and DMV Commissioner Mark Schroeder in that lawsuit.
New York has chosen to prioritize illegal aliens over American citizens. It stops today.
Bondi says New York's green light law, which permits illegals to get driver's licenses, is a hindrance to the work of federal ICE agents. Governor Hochul called the lawsuit a publicity stunt. A 24-year-old Afghan asylum seeker facing terrorism charges today in Munich, Germany. Police say this guy plowed through a crowd with an automobile, injuring 28. Many are critical, some of them children. Key Trump nominees front and center on Capitol Hill today, starting with the vote to confirm Robert Kennedy Jr. as Health Secretary. Reporter Ryan Noble.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. could be in charge of a $1.7 trillion budget and agencies that affect the lives of every American. We're talking about the NIH, also the CDC, the FDA.
Also today, the president's pick for Education Secretary Linda McMahon, sitting for her Senate confirmation hearing. Mr. Trump wants to dissolve the very agency that he's tasked McMahon with leading. A judge has ruled the Trump administration buyout of federal workers can move forward. This is a huge win for the White House, which is attempting a dramatic downsizing of the federal government. Correspondent Peter Alexander.
The Trump administration closing the window for its program offering deferred resignations to federal employees after a judge cleared the program's way yesterday.
The White House says 75,000 federal workers have taken the deal to resign with full pay through September. President Trump welcomes the Prime Minister of India to the White House today.
Prime Minister Modi arriving with the hopes of strengthening India's partnership with the United States and avoiding a trade war. India reportedly plans to cut tariffs in dozens of sectors, including electronics, medical equipment, and chemicals, which could boost American exports to India.
Correspondent Brooks Singman says India is currently our largest trade partner. The president and prime minister will host a joint news conference after 5 o'clock this afternoon. President Trump met yesterday with Russian ruler Vladimir Putin. Those two spoke on the telephone. Trump says Putin very much is interested in winding down the war in Ukraine.
We expect that he'll come here and I'll go there, and we're going to meet also probably in Saudi Arabia the first time.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says U.S. forces will not be part of any NATO-led peacekeeping operation in Ukraine if it should come to that. Republicans are defending cuts to USAID, arguing a lot of expenditures at that agency are out of bounds. Here's Texas Congressman Mike McCall.
$20,000 for drag shows and drag workshops in Ecuador. It is utterly disgusting. $1.5 million to promote LGBTQ causes for immigrants in Latin America. We've also heard about the $15 million for condoms and contraceptives to Afghanistan.
McCall says USAID still has the potential to do good, but it must operate from now on under the jurisdiction of the U.S. State Department. Dozens of religious groups are suing the Trump administration to block immigration raids in houses of worship. The lawsuit claims ICE raids on churches and synagogues violate religious freedom protections by making it harder to minister to immigrants immigrants as well as refugees. So far, the White House has not responded to this lawsuit. It was filed by 27 different religious groups, including Jews, Mennonites, Episcopalians, Quakers, Presbyterians, and Methodists. Next at noon today, a conversation with a paramedic in Israel about the war with Hamas. Aria Myers coordinates emergency services for Israel, and he spoke yesterday with our own Greg Gillespie. Here's some of that conversation.
So this news regarding the hostages and the possibility of the hostage deal collapsing obviously has the whole of the state of Israel very much on edge, concerned about what might happen, whether we will see a resumption of the fighting, rocket attacks again into Israel, and obviously our main concern is also for the hostages themselves. We're very much hoping to see them home as soon as possible.
The release of hostages has been very slow. What has been public reaction to how things have happened since mid-January when this original deal was first announced?
So again, here in Israel, the mood has been partially one of I don't want to use the word celebration, but I guess that's the closest. Some of them are being released alongside this torturous stretching out of the whole process of us only receiving 3 hostages at a time, adding huge stress to the families and to all of us.
You folks have been living kind of on a knife's edge, certainly since October a year and a half ago, but even before that. What is it like to be on the front lines in a nation that has attacks coming in on a relatively regular basis?
Obviously, we weren't expecting anything the size and the scope of what happened on October 7th, 2023. We were still prepared and able to deal with the situation. We were able to treat some 1,000 patients in the first 24 hours. 350 of those were critically injured. And that's part of a process that sees constantly preparing with constant drills, ongoing education, ongoing training, both for our members of staff, our volunteers, but also for members of the general public. Over the last year or so, we've trained some 450,000 people in Israel, including some 15,000 as part of a unique project that sees community-based medical response teams. We provide them with training, with equipment to respond immediately to any incident should it happen in their local community, even before the ambulances can get there. We can have responders within each individual community so they can be the first to act. When something, God forbid, happens, then that gives us a much better chance of being able to save even more lives. Part of this particular project, we saw that especially in the north of Israel, where just a few months ago a rocket struck a soccer field and 12 children were killed by a Hezbollah rocket. And the first people to respond to that were one of our EMTs and also 2 doctors who had undergone training with us and received equipment from us and were able to go and treat and save lives on the scene almost instantly.
Last question here for Aria Meyer in Israel. Waiting and watching is happening now after President Trump's very public announcement that things could switch on Saturday if Hamas doesn't release the hostages that they've been holding. Could be that pressure will release hostages. It could mean more warfare between your nation and your neighbors to the south. What might happen as we move toward the weekend?
These are the things that we're preparing for. What might happen could be anything, but that can change at a moment's notice. It's very, like you said, on a knife's edge at the moment. And our role is to make sure that we are prepared, to make sure that the state of Israel knows that it has this backbone of resilience ready, prepared, and able to treat anyone in need. Just making sure that we are ready to go again at a moment's notice to deploy whatever needs to happen in order to protect and to save the lives of those in Israel.
Some unique perspective there to what is going on right now in the Holy Land. That's Israeli paramedic Aria Myers speaking with our own Greg Gillespie. Now, Greg's complete interview with Aria is available online. You need to go to the special features tab on our news podcast page. That's the special features tab on our news podcast podcast page to find that online. This is the Noon Report for Thursday on Family Life.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. Our latest winter weather maker is departing, leaving in its wake falling temperatures, gusty winds, and the progress of rain showers changing to snow showers. Lake effect snow will target the Syracuse and central New York area later tonight into tomorrow. Then another significant system moves in over the weekend. Heavy snow will be a risk in western areas, an icy mix and rain for eastern parts of the region for the weekend. For this afternoon, blustery, rain showers flipping to snow showers, falling temperatures. Tonight and tomorrow, variable clouds, some snow flurries. Lake effect snow could accumulate several inches in areas southeast of Lake Ontario. Low temps tonight, teens, high temps tomorrow, 20s. Saturday, cloudy with snow arriving and high temperatures in the 30s.
All right, staying busy at the Weather Center. Thank you very much, Kevin. Finally at noon.
What is this thing? It's an asteroid, sir.
NASA says an asteroid up to 300 feet wide could hit planet Earth in a few years. Mark Mayfield fills us in.
Well, the chances are still extremely slim. Probability of the impact has gone up since it was discovered a few weeks back, now currently just over 2%. This number has now almost doubled from the initial number in late January. NASA estimates that the asteroid measures between 130 feet and 300 feet across. Impact would more than likely only cause local damage, not nearly enough to threaten the planet. I'm Mark Mayfield.
Well, that's good news. Thank you, Mark. And just like that, we are out of time. That's our world, the world we live in. Thursday, February 13th. Have a wonderful afternoon. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.